Always fun to see how much of a delay there is.
It's always a little bit more than you think it is.
There we go.
All right, and they're off. So not much to say. Starting off, you'll notice that they're playing on Japanese version. They're actually playing on specifically Japanese version 1.0. Because, first of all, the text is faster, as is often the case in speedrunning, and also because Japanese version 1.0 allows for certain tricks that you'll be using throughout, including one big one called super jumps, which you'll be seeing once they get into a dungeon.
Yeah, so the beginning of the run is pretty standard. First thing you have to do is you have to go down here to the beach and get your sword. There's actually a trick they'll be doing, which is called quick sword, which allows you to pick up the sword a little bit faster than normal. There's a few ways of setting it up. It looks like both of them are going from the top. And it looks like they both got it, too.
Very nice. And we call that quick sword because by picking up the sword early, before the owl finishes talking, the sword pickup text actually appears while the owl is flying away, and it saves them both about a half a second.
Alright, so now they're both making their way up to the woods, where they'll be picking up the some rupees, as well as the key to the first dungeon.
Yes, indeed. Although Vlack has been taking a couple hits from the Octoroks there, so he might opt to take a safety heart, because in order to get that key, they're both going to be doing the first major skip of the game. In order to skip a quest involving the mushroom and a bunch of other things, they're actually going to be using a Moblin's spear to damage boost across a pit. And this trick is called Moblin's Skip, and it's actually, honestly, probably the first major reset point in any PB attempt. So hopefully they'll both have hopefully the Moblin will be cooperative for both of them, and hopefully it won't get them killed. Because you always need to take at least a half heart of damage because of that spear.
Yeah, unfortunately it is RNG. There are a couple little tricks you can do just to keep the Moblin in a hopefully good position. But unfortunately it's really up to the Moblin whether or not get it. And it looks like Vlack is going for the mushroom.
Oh, Black's going to be showing off some of these newer strats. Mushroom strats, which are a very recent development in LADX. Meanwhile, PikaPals having a little bit of trouble with the Moblin, but managing to get across, and Black should have it in a moment here. Nice! Both of them getting the Moblin skip. And Vlack also getting another trick, which you saw him open that menu. If you open that menu a frame after you open the chest, you can actually walk down far enough to skip that entire owl dialogue. So Vlack made up the time he lost from picking up the mushroom by getting owl skip, while PikaPals did not.
Yeah, unfortunately the skip is frame perfect. So sometimes we run into the situation where you're just one pixel away from doing the screen merge, which is always annoying.
Yep, and now because... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You go.
Alright. I was going to say that now, because of Vlack going for mushroom strats, he's actually going to start getting a little bit of divergence. PikaPals has to go down to the trendy game to get the magic powder, but since Vlack has the mushroom, he's actually going to take a little bit of a detour later to visit the witch's hut and get powder that way, so now he's just going straight to the shop first, whereas PikaPals will do it after he gets the powder here.
Yeah, you may be wondering, oh, it seems like getting the mushroom is so much faster since you don't need to go to the trendy game. But since later on you'll have to go out of the way to go to the witch's hut to get it changed into magic powder, I believe it saves a little bit of time, but then you also have to use the mushroom for some tricks, and so most people don't do mushroom strats, but some do.
Yeah. Honestly, the only reason you do it is because of what Black's about to do here. Using the mushroom in the save and quit menu, you can get across pits and set up for a couple of other skips in Dungeon 1 here. And that's actually the only reason why you do it, because if you didn't do those two skips, it wouldn't honestly be worth it at that point.
I believe there's another trick you can do here when you're getting the nightmare key. There's a slightly different way you could go.
Yes. Vlack will actually be using he's going to be taking a slightly different route through D1, and that's because he will be using the mushroom to take a different route up to the Nightmare Key, which we'll be seeing after he gets the dungeon item, which he's on his way to now.
So another thing these runners have to do is they have to be paying attention to how many enemies they kill, because we won't be seeing in this dungeon, but we will be seeing in the next dungeon. There is something that can drop called the Piece of Power, which we'll talk more about later, but it drops when you kill a certain number of enemies. So the runners have to make sure that they kill the right number of enemies so it drops exactly where they want it to.
That's right, because entering or leaving a dungeon or a cavern will actually make you lose that power-up, so you have to have it drop inside the dungeon where you want. And now Vlack has picked up one of the most powerful items in the game, the Rock's Feather, which allows you to jump. And combine that with the mushroom, you're going to see him do some wild shenanigans here in a moment. The specifics of how it worked kind of elude me, but basically, when you use the mushroom, the game doesn't let you fall down pits. So using the save and quit menu, you can buffer a jump off the wall, which is something you're going to be seeing PikaPals do a little bit later. Like I mentioned before, that's something you can only do in version 1.0. That's what a super jump is, and we'll describe it a bit more once PikaPals gets there. It's a little bit easier to describe the setup with the way that PikaPals will do it.
Yeah, it looks like Vlack's timer is a little bit weird. Perhaps it's the segment timer?
Possibly. Or we might have accidentally reset. That's always a possibility.
Yeah, it doesn't matter too much because the official time is the race, like the Speedruns Live race time, so it doesn't particularly matter, but...
Alright, you saw PikaPals do it there. Something you may have been seeing the runners do from the get-go is push up against a wall and seem like Link is kind of walking partially in it. That's called wall clipping. It's something that both allows you to optimize movement while moving around the overworld, but it also, in dungeons, if you do it against a wall, then jump against the wall and push away from it while using a weapon like a bow and arrow or a sword, the game gets a little bit confused and thinks you're on a higher platform and lets you jump down, which lets you go over obstacles, like in that case, the key block.
Yeah, we'll be using those super jumps a lot. It really breaks the game because it lets you skip over just large parts of the dungeon.
Oh yeah, it's one of the most important tricks in this run.
So Vlack right there just demonstrated one of the reasons why we run this in Japanese. While talking to those kids, if you mash B, then it actually skips a lot of the text they say. Whereas in English, you would have to just sit there and wait for, I don't even know how many lines of text it is, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it is. Now, if Vlack seems like he's really far ahead, he did have a very good Dungeon 1, but now he's going to lose a bit of time because he has to go several screens away from Dungeon 2 to go down and get the powder. So he's going to lose some time here while PikaPals will make it back up. So it's going to close the gap a bit. But the important thing now is that both of them are heading up to collect our game-long companion and best friend for the entire rest of the run, the good doggo known as Bow Wow.
Yeah, Bow Wow can do a lot of great things, mostly around him eating enemies or eating obstacles we have to pass. Actually, even eating cutscenes, as we'll see later. The two downsides to Bow Wow are, one, what he eats is really up to him. There are a couple things you can do to make him eat at certain times, but it can be difficult. And the other problem with him is that sometimes your items like the hook shot can bounce off of him instead of going where you want to go. So he's definitely worth it to have around, but he can definitely be a pain at times.
Yep, and not to mention that we mentioned that Wolfos mentioned before, we have to keep they both have to keep an eye on their kill count because of that piece of power. And enemies that Bow Wow eats count toward that kill count as well. So if Bow Wow is feeling exceptionally hungry or exceptionally not hungry, it can cause a little bit of trouble later. So they're hoping to keep an eye on what he eats and adapt to it as they go.
So one thing Vlack did right. Wow, that was very. So that's right there in black screen. That's one thing that Bow Wow can hurt you a lot on. He has to eat those flowers, but when he eats those flowers, it can be right away, like in Black's case, or it can just take ages.
All right, come on back. Oh, PikaPal's having a reasonably quick Bow Wow flower eating there. But Vlack got himself that piece of power. Now let's see if the piece of power drops for PikaPals as well. And there it is, right in the room where they both want to see it. So Wolfos, tell them why piece of power is the greatest thing.
Well, with piece of power, so it both increases your movement speed, it lets you pick up pots faster, and also increases your damage. So it's especially useful inside dungeons where you have to move around a lot and you have to fight a lot of mini bosses or the bosses. It's extremely important to have.
Yes, indeed. That extra damage is very, very helpful because basically your normal swings do the damage of a spin attack. However, there is one thing about piece of power that makes it disadvantageous in a couple of spots, which is you may see it there on PikaPal's screen. It gives a little bit of knockback, which also gives the enemies slightly longer invincibility frames, which normally isn't a problem, but in a couple spots, especially later on in Dungeon 5, and we'll point it out when it happens, you're going to see them lose piece of power on purpose, because it makes the boss a lot easier. But yeah, with piece of power in tow, both of them are making real short work of the Bottle Grotto here. Vlack already on his way to the dungeon boss, and PikaPals not far behind, picking up the key here in a moment.
Yeah, one thing there on PikaPal's screen, you actually have to kill these enemies in a certain order, which can be annoying depending on where the monsters happen to move around.
Yeah, Stalfos likes to be a troll sometimes, but thankfully it seems that neither of them had trouble with it. Now Vlack onto the Clown Genie, or I can't think of a good, weird combination here. You're supposed to throw the bottle against the wall 3 times, but if you clip into the wall, the game lets you get away with just throwing it once and it breaks immediately.
Yeah, and by placing the bomb there and lining up in a certain spot at the door, the genie, he just moves exactly where you want him to and can defeat him very quickly.
Yep. Bow and arrow is an extremely useful item. It does a lot of damage by itself, and if you use bombs and arrows right on top of each other within 4 frames, you shoot a bomb arrow, which makes the bomb explode as soon as it hits something. And thankfully, that genie has a really nasty pattern in its second phase where it just teleports around the room, but you can hit it with the bomb arrow before it starts teleporting, which saves you a lot of time. You do not want it to start teleporting around because it takes forever.
Yeah, another nice thing about bomb arrows, they're just very fast. So there'll be times where we'll use bomb arrows on on crumbling walls just so we can break them much more quickly than having to place a bomb and wait for it to explode.
Yeah, but at the same time, you're not going to be seeing them use it every single possible spot, because bombs and arrows, both of them, are something that they have to be keeping their eye on the counts very carefully, because they actually need both for the final boss, and the count is going to be very tight in spots. But now Vlack coming up on the next big RNG moment here, and a very major skip. Oh! Global frame rules giving him a hard time, so this is what is called Villa skip here, and oh man, he's just having trouble with it.
Yeah, essentially the idea is that there's this one frame that instead of falling down the pit, you can actually hold down, and it pushes you down, as you saw on Black's screen. Unfortunately, it is dependent on global frame rules, so it can happen right away, or it can, take time after time after time. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, you watch PikaPals, you can listen. PikaPals will keep pause buffering until, just like that, hear that fall sound, and it pushes you down that 1 pixel, just like that.
Yeah, it really saves a lot of time, though, because it skips this whole side quest you have to do, getting these golden leaves, going to this castle, And instead we can just pick up the key, which here looks like one of the golden leaves, but is actually the key.
And on top of that, we take advantage of the extremely well-programmed keyholes in this game, because it turns out if you clip into a wall, you can actually put keys into keyholes from the wrong side. Which you saw them do less spectacularly at Dungeon 1, and right here, for the Dungeon 3 keyhole, they'll just like that.
Such a well-programmed game.
Yes, yes indeed. And we love it for that. We hope you weren't too attached to the Dungeon 3 music, because it's time for Piece of Power again. And Dungeon 3, it's very useful, because it makes a certain skip coming up for Vlack a little bit easier. Oh, thank goodness. Nope, he got without any trouble.
Yeah, so the problem with that jump right there is essentially you're doing a super jump where you have to bounce off of those dodongos in order to get to that area blocked off by the key blocks. Unfortunately, if you mistime that, you can actually get stuck within the key block or within the other blocks, and you're just stuck, and you'll have to save and quit to get out of it.
Yep.
And unfortunately, you have to do it twice, but it looks like Vlack and PikaPals here having no problems getting through it.
Yeah, the trick to it is basically you have to do it immediately, because the snakes are only in position for the first few moments of being in that room. If you take a little bit too long to set it up, the snake moves and you don't quite bounce as far. Thankfully, on the second try, you can often use the boots to get out if you do land in the block, but on the first try, if you get stuck, you're stuck. You gotta save and quit. And since this is a no save and quit race, if the racers have to save and quit for whatever reason, or they do it accidentally, they have to return to the room where it happened in order to make sure they don't unintentionally death warp.
Yeah, and Vlack there showing off the power of Piece of Power, just completely destroying that boss in no time at all.
Yeah, that boss is a little bit more harrowing without the Piece of Power, because you have to let it jump a second time and use spin attacks to do it efficiently. And that boss, at this point when you only have 5 hearts, can kill you surprisingly easily if you're not keeping an eye on your health.
PikaPals opting to go for that lower jump there. Doesn't save too much time, but looks very cool. He almost didn't make it, though.
Alright, PikaPals setting up to take on Vitreous as well. And another textbook boss kill, both of them making short work of Dungeon 3. But no, you don't have time to relax yet out there, because now we're heading up to one of the most dangerous tricks. We mentioned earlier about having that safety save. That safety save is because of this trick coming up here called Walrus Skip. And we're going to talk about the absolutely most broken item in the game. It's not the Rock's Feather. It's a simple bomb. Wolfos, why are bombs so broken?
That is an excellent question with a very hard to determine answer. So for some reason, if you place 2 bombs within, I believe it's 4 frames of one another, then these weird effects happen. As you can see here, the Walrus cutscene's playing even though Marin isn't there. There are a lot of cutscenes that will play when they're not supposed to, and it's very useful because that allows us to sequence break a bit. But unfortunately, we don't fully understand exactly what's going on here. But the problem with Walrus Skip is that if you don't do it properly and leave the screen with the walrus at the exact right time, then you actually soft lock, because you can't. So if you don't leave the screen fast enough, then you get stuck. And if you leave at the wrong time, then the walrus will still be there, and you won't be able to use your items or even save and quit to leave out of it. So.
Yep, because what you can't see is on Vlack, notice he went into that cave, because after doing that trick, all their buttons except for the D-pad are locked. So they have to go into that cave in order to regain control of the buttons. And if you accidentally do that soft lock where the walrus sticks around, you can't get to any doors without buttons. So that's why you have that safety save in case of that soft lock. And thankfully none of them get it, both of them getting it no trouble. and taking care of land. Yeah, there was a boss there. We swear they didn't just fire 2 arrows and get a key out of the sand. But we just Land Molus's hitbox appears before you can even see it. So with 2 arrows, Land Molus is done, and Dungeon 4 key in hand.
Yeah, one other interesting thing about Walrus Skip is you can actually do it from the top or the side. Black went for the side route, and Pika went for the top. It's kind of up to personal preference which one you do. I'm more of a top person myself, but both of the setups are pretty consistent if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, both setups are 100% safe, although the top setup was the first 100% safe setup that was discovered, so that's the one that a lot of folks learned first, especially newer runners who picked up the game within the last few months. Because the safe side strat was developed very, very recently, in fact.
Yeah, the side strat is a little bit faster because there's one less screen you have to go through, but it's better to do the one you're more comfortable with.
No, yeah, absolutely. Because we do have a safety save, but having to hard reset your system and then reload the save and do all that setup again wastes you quite a bit of time. Better off just to waste a few seconds doing the top rather than the side of you'd rather than... Alright, now most important thing here, PikaPals hopefully remembers to go open Dungeon 4. Very good.
Oh no, Vlack, no obstacle skip.
No obstacle skip.
Banned.
Run disqualified. Poor Vlack.
Yeah, so what we were talking about there is that there are those green jewel things that you normally, to get around them, you have to destroy them with a running Pegasus boots smash, but that particular one you can actually jump around. Really doesn't save that much time, and you lose a lot more time than you save if you mess it up, but everybody goes for it because it's just tradition.
Yeah. It saves you that fraction of a second, and you lose 2 to 3 seconds if you screw it up. Now Vlack's setting up for dumb jump number 1, getting it no problem, almost as if the jump weren't dumb, but it is.
Oh, it is.
Oh, yes it is. That jump is deceptively difficult. It's actually harder than the one he just did, even though it doesn't look as impressive.
Oh no, Pika! Didn't get it either.
Oh my goodness. Next thing you're going to tell me neither of them are going to attack Bwang Boys, in which case they're both just kicked out of the community.
Well, to be fair, both of them do have another try for obstacle skips, so...
Well, that's true. Okay, I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah, but it didn't look like really either of them were trying to set it up. Maybe Black a little bit more than Pika, but hopefully they'll get the next one.
We can hope. But hang on a second. Black seems to be leaving Dungeon 4 without finishing. That's not an accident. There's a very good reason for that.
Yeah, so essentially what happens is that after you beat Dungeon 4, there's actually this ghost that appears that wants you to do this whole side quest. You have to walk around, you have to take him to his house, yada yada yada. But you can actually get the dungeon item, the flippers, from Dungeon 4, and then come back later to finish it off after Dungeon 6. And if you do that, then the ghost actually never appears, so you don't have to do that whole side quest thing.
Yep, because as it turns out, the game checks for 2 things to see whether or not you get that side quest. 1, have you finished Dungeon 4? 2, do you have the level 2 power bracelet? If you have a level 2 power bracelet, then that quest just won't happen, and that's the Dungeon 6 item. So we go take care of Dungeon 6, and while we're down there, might as well do Dungeon 5 since it's right there. But boy, oh boy, what a dungeon Dungeon 5 is. It is the longest dungeon, and the one where they absolutely want to have Piece of Power drop in this room, and Vlack gets it.
Yeah, the thing about this dungeon, as you will see, is that there's a lot of moving around, a lot of backtracking, and so it's really this dungeon that Piece of Power makes the most difference. It saves about 30, maybe 40 seconds.
Most definitely, and that's entirely because of this dungeon's questionable gimmick. There's actually a treasure chest you run into after a mini-boss fight, which is supposed to have the dungeon item in it, but when you open it up, you get a note that says, "I've stolen the dungeon item, come fight me to get it back." Who stole it? Master Stalfos, this guy right here on Black's screen, and you have to fight him 4 times in specific rooms in order to get him to drop the hookshot. So we're going to be doing this grand tour of the dungeon to fight him exactly where he wants to be fought, and it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, the first and third time you see, or the first and fourth time you see him, it takes 3 hits, and the second and third, it takes 2. And by hits, I mean bomb hits. And he can go down pretty quickly if you get your timing for the bombs correct, as you can see what Vlack is doing, but it's really just having to move around the dungeon that really eats up the time.
Yep. And thankfully, you may be wondering why you saw them use bomb arrows for the first time and not for the second time. That's because since you have to wait for him to get back up and talk before he flies off, there's actually no benefit to using bomb arrows for the second or third fights. Not to mention, fun fact, if you actually hit him with 3 bomb arrows, even though it only takes 2 to end that fight, you get a kill animation for Master Stalfos in the second and third fights. But he doesn't drop the hookshot, just drops dungeon keys, which is kind of weird and not terribly helpful, so we just don't do it.
Huh, I actually didn't know that one.
Yep. And it's no faster than just doing it with 2 bombs, so just save ourselves the arrows and the bombs and just do it a bit closer to the way the game intends.
So speaking of the way the game intends, what you're supposed to do here is you're supposed to have gotten the hook shot from the Master Stalfos to move that ladder. However, with some good timing of jumps and the Pegasus boots, you can actually get across without it. And that saves a lot of time, because otherwise you would have to first defeat Master Stalfos, which puts you at one end of the dungeon, and then go back to get the boss key, which is really out of the way.
Yeah, it's a huge detour. The final Master Stalfos fight is actually in the room next to where they got the very, very first key. And you saw how far away that nightmare key is. So, yeah, we don't want to take that detour.
Yeah, it's also another reason why Piece of Power is nice, because that added movement speed can help you a bit with traversing that gap.
Yeah. Horizontal positioning is the most important thing, but having a little bit of extra boost can make that jump, definitely makes that jump easier. And it's not an easy jump. There's a reason we call it dumb jump number 2.
Yeah, but it looks like PikaPal's going to see if he can get it first try like Black did.
Hopefully. Actually, it's actually a pretty good time to mention one thing I think we forgot to say about Piece of Power is that you can actually also lose it by taking 3 hits from enemies, but falling down pits does not count toward that, thankfully.
Yeah, but this is actually one of the times where you do want to lose Piece of Power in a certain spot, because the boss of this dungeon, because of the knockback due to Piece of Power, it's actually better for you to lose it. So you want to keep it as long as you can through the dungeon, but then in this next room of Vlax here, you usually lose it there, so.
Yep. Because of that, like we said, that knockback gives the boss a little bit of extra invincibility frames, and this boss takes 8 hits, and you want to hit it in 2 cycles. And you have very limited windows to hit it, so with those extra frames of invincibility, it's actually surprisingly difficult to get 4 hits per cycle. So that's also...
It sounds like PikaPals unfortunately lost his Piece of Power a little bit earlier than he wanted to.
Indeed, but thankfully at this point, PikaPals is far off. Oh, that's unfortunate. If you lose it earlier than you want to here, you generally don't want to see a second one in Dungeon 5, because Dungeon 6 Piece of Power routing is extremely difficult just because of how difficult it is to keep track of your kill count this late in the game. But you still kind of keep your fingers crossed and hope you see it in D6, but seeing it there means that PikaPals will not be seeing Piece of Power in D6.
Yeah, I think I heard that Bamboo does route out his kills to get D6 Piece of Power, but most of the time people just kind of hope and pray for the best that it will happen to drop where they want it.
Yeah, D6 piece of power is kind of like menu routing, and is one of those things where you really don't need to worry about it too much until you get a sub-hour time, at which point the seconds really start counting. So that's where you really start focusing on those things.
Yeah, so before Vlad can get to D6, he has to get the D6 key, which involves him going through this Armos maze. And the nice thing about this Armos maze is that if Bow Wow cooperates with you, the little Armos statues can drop arrows. This is a nice place to get your arrow count back up, especially if you've lost or had to use a lot of arrows for some reason.
Yes. And Vlack, because Vlack using his mushroom strats in order to cut down the number of menus he used in Dungeon 1, actually used a lot of extra arrows in Dungeon 1. So you might see him stop to grab some arrows like he did right there, because he only had one arrow, if you saw on his menu screen, so...
Yeah, I believe the average is getting about 3 arrows, or that's about what you want to have.
Yeah, thankfully, you only need to worry about, there's actually a couple of floating arrow drops in Dungeon 8, so as long as he just has enough arrows to make it through that point to Dungeon 8, he should be fine for the final boss. Just keeping an eye on that count is very, very important, because you run out of arrows and you don't know where to find the pickups, that could be the end.
Yeah, Vlack killed that Armos Master there, or I believe that's his name, with something called bootstraps. The idea of the boss is that when he jumps up and slams on the ground, it stuns you, sort of like Vitreous.
Yeah.
But if you time your bonking into the wall properly, you can actually be in the air while he does that. And the method that Vlack used there actually, at the final hit, has the boss being extremely close to the door, so it's, I believe it's the fastest method you can do it. But if you mess up, then it can be very difficult to recover. And unfortunately, Vlack, seeing that piece of power where he really didn't want to see it right before entering D6, so not going to get a D6 piece of power.
Definitely not, but however, he does get a little bit of food for Bow Wow there, because you saw him shoot that arrow to the left while he was jumping toward the keyhole. And what that does is, the game treats cutscenes as sprites, and by having the sprite of the arrow, it's a little bit fuzzy for me. I think the way it's been described to me is that when you fire an arrow or fire a bomb arrow at the left wall there, it gives Bow Wow a sprite he can eat, and since the game's not sure what to do with that sprite, it assigns the cutscene to it, and when he eats that sprite, he eats the cutscene, which allows you to just leave, and the door's open.
Yeah, so we'll do it there, and also there's another dungeon opening that we'll be doing that for. I believe you're right. It's something like the cutscenes are handled as sprites, and so if you hit them in a certain way, Bow Wow will eat it, but I'm not 100% sure how it works.
Yeah, I think you need to have a sprite on the screen like at the right time, and Bow will eat that, and it counts as the cutscene. It's a little bit weird. There's a lot of things about this game that are a little bit weird, but that's kind of part of the charm of it. Like this right here, it's what Vlack is doing.
Yeah, so if you use the hook shot on a pot like that, then you actually get invincibility. So that's very useful for that room. Unfortunately, there's not really any other place that's used. So nice for that room, but unfortunately, no other rooms.
Yep, and we hope you haven't forgotten about super jumps, because you're about to see a sequence of them, or as TGH has referred to them, the parkour room. Yeah, so there's a small super jump that he did just so he could get clipped into the wall properly, and then a normal super jump to get on top of that ledge, and then there was that super jump right there that Vlack did, which you actually have to line up pretty carefully to do that super jump, otherwise you can soft lock because you'll be in the wall. Thankfully, there's a pretty good visual cue to determine whether you'll soft lock or not, so you just have to be in the right spot, but
Also, Vlack getting some not great RNG with these horse heads.
Having a little bit of trouble with those skill horses.
Yeah, those horse heads are unfortunately completely RNG. They both need to be faced up, and it's a 50-50 shot per head, whether it's going to be up or down. So you just have to throw them and hope for the best.
Yep, the old route through D6 actually used to skip that room but fight the mini-boss. But then it turns out that with mini-boss RNG, as long as you don't get way too many horsehead attempts, it's still faster to go through the horsehead room. So that's just the route that almost everybody uses these days.
Yeah, so Vlack here, facing one of the easier bosses. One nice thing about it is that his hitbox actually appears a little bit before he does. So you can actually bomb the ground 3 times before he officially wakes up. So you can get him pretty quickly. You have to be careful, though, with all of those tiles flying around, though, that you don't get hit.
Yeah, it's no exaggeration to say that Facade is one of the easiest bosses, but that doesn't mean you can't die to him if you're not careful.
Oh, PikaPals getting Piece of Power.
So, might gain back a few seconds in movement here, so we'll see. And Vlack, using bomb triggers again. You can use bomb triggers there, as well as he tried it after Dungeon 3, it didn't quite get. You can use it to skip the animations of the owl flying in and flying out. So in that case, saved a couple of seconds of owl animations that he didn't have to look at.
Yeah, one thing about doing that bomb trigger there, though, is, of course, it does waste bombs. So this next dungeon that we're going to use it, the dungeon after this one uses a lot of bombs for bomb triggers. So if you have low bomb counts, then that can be troublesome.
Yeah, bombs are an incredibly useful item throughout this game, both for legit and slightly less legit reasons. But hey, Dungeon 4. It's time to finish what we started. And boy oh boy, poor Dungeon 4 getting broken so hard in this run.
Yeah, there's really... you get the dungeon item... So you go in, you get the dungeon item, you leave, you come back, you get the Nightmare Key by doing this fancy super jump, which, sort of like the Dodongo skip, hits off of an enemy to get that little bit more distance. And then you can just jump right there and go straight to the boss, Anglerfish.
Which, no, it's a boss, we swear. Wow, Vlack actually going for sword strats instead of bomb strats there.
He's really low on bombs. So I think he did that solely to preserve his bomb count for all of the bomb triggers ahead.
That is a completely valid reason, because, like White Wolfo said, Dungeon 7, the next dungeon, is bomb triggers the dungeon. And on top of that, you use bombs for the boss. So you use bombs, it's pretty much always on one of your buttons in Dungeon 7. Oh, actually, Spicefather pointing out that Vlack always goes full Star on Angler. I'm not sure how I haven't noticed that, because I've been watching his streams lately. I think I might have been just... It's a short fight. I think my excuse is that I missed it by looking away for a second.
Yeah, PikaPals are also getting the skip. As you can see, he has a lot more bombs, so that's safer for him to do that, definitely.
Alright, but now they are both heading toward the trick that could act as a big equalizer here. You saw them both practicing beforehand, and for anyone who's learned this game, it's a trial by fire to learn this trick. I'm talking, of course, about Rooster Skip, because anyone who played this game casually can tell you that to get the Dungeon 7 key, the game expects you to get the ocarina, do the signpost maze, learn the frog song, which costs 300 rupees, then resurrect a flying rooster and use the flying rooster to fly across a weird room to get the key. That takes forever. So instead, we just take advantage of shenanigans involving the hookshot and how the game handles the hookshot to skip all that.
Very nice obstacle skip by Vlack there.
Yes.
So at least he got one of them. Yeah, so unfortunately with this rooster skip, falling into the pit isn't like a normal falling into a pit, where it just respawns you at the beginning of the room. You actually will fall down and have to go... Oh no!
The global frame rules got him.
Yeah, just like that. If you just mess up or the global frame rules get you, you can just fall straight down. And then you have to climb up the staircase and come back in here to try it again.
Yeah, basically what you're trying to do is, while you're hookshotting, the game's not checking that you're on solid ground. And for exactly one frame while the hookshot is retracting, the game isn't checking for ground, and you can actually jump with the rock's feather, just like that. So, doing multiple frame-perfect inputs, you can jump across that gap without needing the rooster. But the problem is, with stuff like global frame rules, you saw what happened to Vlack. He got the hookshot out, but he fell on the exact same frame, so the game dumped him out anyway. That's one of the worst things about Rooster Skip, is the fact that you can do it absolutely right, but the game can still just say no.
Indeed, especially with Bow Wow, because Bow Wow can really harm you here. The hookshot will, if Bow Wow is in the way, clink off of him and won't give you enough time to react, and a lot of times you'll just plummet just because Bow Wow was in a weird position.
Yeah. There's several things that can go wrong. Thankfully, there's actually a slightly safer strat, which I'm pretty sure we're going to be seeing PikaPals do, because we actually know the exact number of frames that each individual menu in this game causes to pass. So using save and quit menu buffering and then a map buffer, we can buffer the jump exactly so that it always is on the correct frame to make the jump. We're going to be seeing PikaPals do that when he gets to the Rooster Skip room.
And there's another nice cutscene eat by our friend Bow Wow. Oh no, PikaPals didn't get obstacle skip. Very sad. So at least we got to see one obstacle skip this race, but...
Alright, but meanwhile, Vlack is beginning his journey through the bomb trigger dungeon. Because as you can see, bomb triggers can be used to break the pillars. Because if you play the game casually, you might remember something about throwing a large metal ball to break the pillars, but turns out...
Oh no!
Oh, Vlack!
So... he needed one more bomb because you have to break open the wall and then do another set of bomb triggers, which costs 2 bombs. So he's actually 1 bomb short. So now he has to go and pick up bombs.
Yeah, and then he needs them for the boss too, so you gotta be careful. Because he did it correct, he did it well. The danger of doing the dropping in the pit strat you saw him doing is in that one you have to mash fast enough, because if you start dropping bombs into the pit but you don't do it within 4 frames, it is completely possible to drop most of your bombs, if not all of your bombs, in the pit and not trigger. So you gotta be really fast, or just use the screen transition method, which a lot of folks will still opt to use just for safety.
Yeah, there's actually another place you could pick up bombs in this dungeon. You can actually go upstairs and there's a bomb drop that most of the time you get anyway, because you need bombs for the boss, and you might be low after all of your bomb triggers. But I guess I didn't know about that other bomb drop under the pots, so good thing he did.
Yeah, I actually was not aware of that either, because most folks will just go up here and get this flying bomb drop up here. Alright, now he's setting up for another RNG trick here called Goomba Surf, and he gets the good Goomba placement, and he's through. That's exactly what you want to see.
And Pika getting his cutscene need as well.
Alright, Vlack about to face off against Evil Eagle, who used to be an absolute joke before with the old dungeon order when you use the magic rod. Now, he's no less of a joke. We just use 3 bombs. Because if you throw a bomb, and as soon as Evil Eagle leaves the screen, it will always fly right into your bomb's explosion.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a timing you have to get. in terms of how to throw the bomb and then toss it up and everything. But once you get that rhythm down, this boss is pretty easy.
Yeah, but you gotta be careful, though, because if you fall off that screen before you get that heart, Evil Eagle comes back and you gotta fight him again. Meanwhile, PikaPals, we see using the... not using the pit strat and going entirely on screen transitions for the bomb triggers, which is the safer strat. It's actually the one I use as well. I like the security of not accidentally dropping all my bombs in a hole.
Yeah, another thing you can do is that you can actually buffer these bomb triggers, both in the pits and on screen transitions. So there's just a lot of ways to do it, and which way you do it is kind of up to personal preference. Though, of course, buffering... Oh no, he didn't hit the switch. Buffering, of course, is slower, but...
PikaPals probably going to be opting for, Goomba Surf strats here as well. Otherwise, would have pulled out the sword to go for the other strat. Oh no, this is what you don't want to see. You need to have that top Goomba move right, just like that. Oh no! This trick is difficult because you both need to have the Goomba in the right spot, and you have to do a naked super jump, which is very tricky.
Yeah, and Vlack right there, he did a skip called Marin Skip, which what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to use the hook shot to get across the pit, carrying Marin along with you, and then Marin talks to you, and Terran talks to you, and then the owl talks to you. It takes like 40 seconds thereabouts.
Yeah,
so instead of that, you can actually use your Pegasus boots to just jump across and skip having to talk to her or her dad or the owl. So we leave her up there, but it'll be all okay.
Yep. You may also notice we're not actually getting the Dungeon 7 item. That's because the Dungeon 7 item is the level 2 shield, and it's absolutely worthless, because we neither use it for the boss nor for its intended purpose of getting past that flamethrower heading toward Dungeon 8. Because if you wall clip, the flamethrower won't push you back, and you can just damage boost through it. Which you saw Black do, and you'll be seeing PikaPals do it here in a moment. Meanwhile, Black already into Dungeon 8, using bomb triggers again to play the frog song on a bomb and just wake up the door, which you can just walk through it. Doesn't have a collider on it.
Truly, bomb's the greatest instrument of them all.
Oh, the greatest instrument. Tried to sign up for my local Philharmonic playing the bomb, and they just said, "Who are you? Why are you in here? I'm going to call the cops."
They just don't understand its true beauty, I guess.
I guess. Link was ahead of his time. God, there's just so much to talk about. This game is just a non-stop whirlwind of tricks and just weird things happening.
There goes Final Flame's favorite room.
Shoutouts to Final Flame. And shoutouts to Blano's skip for no longer being valid in LADX no out of bounds because of a change in the out of bounds rules a while back. Because in case we didn't mention it, the current out of bound ruling for Link's Awakening DX is you can't be more than one tile away from a floor you normally are able to stand on.
Yeah, and unfortunately, to do Blano skip, you do have to step on one tile, which you can't normally get to, so... Unfortunately, it's no longer there, but some of the other categories have it. I think LA does it, right?
Yes, Link's Awakening does. Because they have a different definition of out of bounds, which also means their version of Rooster skip is a lot easier. And now we're going to see PikaPals go for flamethrower skip here as well, and just like that. Oh, taking 2 hits though. That flame does, I want to say, 2.5 hearts of damage, so if you're a little bit slow, it can kill you. You gotta be careful with that.
Yeah, thankfully, it's not like you lose so much time, because it just sends you to the beginning of that little cave section, but any deaths are unfortunate.
Yes, indeed. And not to mention that if a player does have to die and restart, they have to return to the room where they died, because again, to do otherwise would go against the rules of no save and quit. And now Vlack attempting to do a Jesus jump. If you pause on the same frame you would land in the lava, you can actually buffer a jump to just clip into the wall and super jump straight to the boss. Hothead.
Yeah, Hothead is a little bit annoying. His invincibility frames can be a little tricky to deal with. So it seems like you should just mash as much as you can, but sometimes it's better to take it a little slower.
Yep, and...
Wing boys!
Getting that beautiful wang, boys. Run validated.
Indeed. Yeah, that's just a little graphical glitch you can do by using the magic rod at a certain point as you pick up the instrument that all runners must go for. Yes. Very necessary.
It's also worth mentioning that Vlack got a 1-cycle Hothead, and considering that Hothead's first phase health is kind of not set, like it can vary, getting a 1-cycle Hothead is actually not as easy as you might think. So Vlack had a very good boss fight and the Wang boys, so he is in great shape heading up to the egg for the final dungeon.
So do you want to explain like all of the many parts of this final boss?
Oh boy. There's so much to talk about in this egg. First of all, we're going to be seeing another delightful use of the bomb as an instrument here to have the longest cutscene where you can see Link just playing it right there. Look at him rock on that bomb. So the first thing we gotta know about the egg is the egg's corridors are randomized if you played this game casually. Actually, that's not entirely true. The corridors are only randomized if you do the trade sequence and read the book in the library, but we haven't done the trade sequence. However, we know what the default pattern is, so we can just skip the trade sequence and go left, up, right, up, left, up, and go straight to the final boss. And once they get to the final boss, it's going to be really fast. The first thing you're going to be doing is you're going to be seeing them spam bombs to skip a dialogue and, sadly, despawn the music, and then they're going to be immediately trying to do something called the blob quick kill. Standing on a specific pixel, they will be try to force the blob to land on the sword, which will basically pretty much kill the blob outright instead of having to throw magic powder at it. So that's enough to sit on for now. Once Vlack hopefully does the blob quick kill, then we can start worrying about the second phase, which worrying is a very good word for it.
Yeah, another thing to mention with this blob quick kill is that even if you have the setup right, there is a little bit of RNG determining whether or not it will actually happen. So it looks like Vlack did get the tech skip.
And I think he's got the setup, and he got it. Now he's on to phase 2, which you might remember if you played Link to the Past, but it's not quite the same. And why isn't it quite the same?
So the first 2 shots that he gives, you are able to reflect back in him, and that's always the case. Oh, and Wang boys from PikaPals, always nice. But after that, it's a 50-50 shot whether he'll give you balls that you can actually reflect and damage him with, or blue balls, which you can't and will just damage you. It looks like Vlack had very good luck there.
I don't think you got any blue balls. That was really good.
So next part of the fight here is that quick kill, there's Moldorm again, but if you stand in the right place and swing your sword, you can actually trap him there, take him down very quickly. Ganon here is pretty easy to take down with boots. Lamola doesn't really exist once again. And now for the final boss of the final boss, it's Deathel.
Oh, Deathel. And remember we said it's literally not over till it's over, because Deathel is only vulnerable when it opens its eye, and if it doesn't want to open the eye, it just doesn't. And you have to hit it 16 times in the eye with the bow and arrow. Oh, Black getting surprisingly good RNG there, though.
Yeah, sometimes he just won't open his eye at all, and then sometimes it will open it instantly. It's really just up to him.
Yeah, and there are very few things sadder than seeing someone on world record pace and then lose it to Deathel. But with that, Black has finished with an official SRL time of 54.50 and advances to round 2. And now let us see if PikaPals can have an equally as good final boss fight, because that was a great final boss from Black. Alright, so we'll see if Black wants to come in and say hello. And also, PikaPal is actually showing that that bomb he dropped appears in the next screen, because the passageways of the egg are actually just the same screen looping over and over. It's just keeping track of which doors you use to follow the right pattern. Now let's see if PikaPals can get the dialogue skip. No, sadly no.
Well, at least we get some of the music.
Yes. This is the only spot in the game where this song appears, and it's a catchy tune. I'm almost happy to hear it. Unless I'm on PB pace.
Yeah, the one thing with not getting the tech skip is actually the blob will be in a different position, so the setup for the quick kill is different.
Yep, so let's see if PikaPal's... Nope. PikaPal's not getting the alternate pixel, sadly.
Yeah, so I'll have to take out his magic powder, hit him 3 times.
Oh, not quite getting the triple without it sinking into the ground. You can actually hit it with a second powder before it goes into the ground and save some time. That's not intended, but hey, if you can do it, more power to you.
I think not intended is the slogan for this speedrun.
But you know what? We're having fun doing it, and that very much is the intent, so I say it all kind of cancels out in the end.
There you go. Good way of thinking of it.
Yeah. Alright, let's see how Aghanim treats PikaPals. Okay, so far 3 for 3. And... oh! Getting 1 blue ball. I think our record for this tournament, is... we had a 13 blue ball race, which was absolutely terrible.
Yeah, it can be really demoralizing, especially if you're on a good pace.
Alright, 2 blue balls is not too bad. Now hopefully you can get the... alright, got the setup for the Moldrum quick kill. The thing about the Moldrum quick kill is, if you drop it, you have to basically hit it in the tail 16 times and it takes forever. But you have to swing the sword in a tempo. If you swing it too fast, it's very easy to accidentally let a Moldrum get loose. So that's actually a little bit trickier than it looks. And just like that, Lanmolus, the fake boss that's not actually there, is gone, and it's time to see how Deathel treats PikaPals. And gotta be careful, though. It's one of those things you never really think about much, but Deathel's arms really hurt.
Yeah, I actually find his arms harder to dodge when at the beginning, instead of at the end where they're swinging kind of irregularly, so you only have to jump over one at a time. But I'm weird like that.
No, I agree. It's definitely harder to dodge at the beginning. But PikaPal's getting it. Looks like that was a 5 round. Because you can get 4 arrows per round, but it's very tight. A lot of times you'll actually see them get 3 arrows, then tink the 4th. PikaPal's got 4, 4, 3, 1, and with that, PikaPals is also done with a official SRL time of 58.47.
So, according to the leaderboards, it's a PB, but at least according to him in the chat, it's really 20 seconds off.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate, but still, finishing within 20 seconds of your PB in a race, that's something you can be pretty proud of.
Very, very nice.
Yeah, because with how much RNG this game likes to throw at people sometimes, that means you're getting consistent, and getting consistent in this game is all you can really hope to do. But with that, let's see if PikaPals wants to pop in and say hello or say a few words. Oh, I think so. Let's get it. Let's get PikaPals in here. PikaPals, GG. Nice job on finishing within 20 seconds of your PB like that.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I was like a minute ahead of PB going into D7 and then like 25 coming out of it, so that really hurt.
Guys, those Goombas were not being very cooperative.
I mean, they were perfectly fine, and then I missed, and then they sucked.
Yeah, unfortunately, those naked super jumps can really be a pain.
Yeah, that one, I don't know why, I just always have trouble with it.
No, that's the way it is. LADX giveth and LADX taketh away. Some days it just messes with you.
Yeah, pretty much.
So were there any other parts of the run that you were particularly like proud or annoyed about?
I mean, I had a fairly good early game. I was happy to get the D5 POP, and then I kept it for a while at least. And then the D6 POP was a nice surprise.
Yeah, unfortunately, Vlack missed the D6 POP. It appeared right before he entered D6.
Oh no. Let's see. Those cutscenes just like messing with you sometimes. It's their revenge, really.
It's like, oh, you're too good to watch our cutscenes. Well, how about this?
Yeah, I'll just make you lose this time somewhere else.
That's an awful nice pace you got going there. It'd be a shame if something were to happen. But, aside from that, though, regrettably, we're in single elimination now, so PikaPals, I'm afraid this is where your run ends here. But you got really far, and that's something to be proud of, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot farther than I expected to make it. I expected to go out in groups, but making it to brackets was really nice.
Yeah, it was interesting that you had to face Vlack again, considering that you had to face him in the group stage as well.
Yeah, it was kind of funny like that, but that's how seeding works. Sometimes you just play against the same person you lost to earlier and hope to bring him a good fight.
And you did. That was a solid race. Nothing to be. You did well. You can hold your head high walking away from that one.
Yeah, I'm not feeling too bad about losing to number 3 seed in the tournament.
Yeah, Vlack has definitely proven himself to be a force of nature, and he was bringing in some of those newer strats in this and using the mushroom and all that. So I think a lot of folks are definitely expecting him to go very far.
Yeah, I bet he will.
But he's got his work cut out for him because his next round is going to be against Green Tunic, and Green Tunic is another name that folks expect to go far. So that's going to be a race to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it seems like once we hit the top 8, pretty much everyone's expected to go far. And I don't think they can really go. Everyone can't go much farther, unfortunately.
Yeah, them's the breaks, but that definitely means we have a lot of good races to look forward to still in this tournament.
Yeah, so it looks like we have 2 more races this week to finish up the first round of the tournament with. There's Alfezo and Stanner on Saturday at 6 p.m. EDT, and Dragon and Happy on Sunday at 10 a.m.
Yes, indeed. With that, after that we'll just be in the top 8, and it's shaping up to be a very exciting top 8. I'm actually really looking forward to see what next week brings. But as far as upcoming races, let's talk a little bit about what we got going on Speed Gaming here. This is actually about the end of this content we got for today. There's a Link to the Past randomizer finishing up on Speed Gaming 2, but nothing else tonight. But tomorrow, we hope you like randomizers. Oh boy, do we hope you like randomizers. We got Final Fantasy Randomizer at 1:30 p.m., and that's not a 1:30 a.m. Oh heavens, I don't know how to read time, I guess. But we also have Super Metroid Randomizer one after the other at noon, 2 of those, and then more Final Fantasy tomorrow night at 8 p.m.
And also, as a heads up, there's going to be a ton of Link to the Past randomizer tomorrow, too. It's just not on the schedule yet.
Yeah, well, we have 4 channels of speed gaming, so I'm sure you'll have no difficulty finding LTTP Rando if you want to watch it.
Yeah, as someone who's also in the Rando tournament, we've definitely done a very good job keeping the schedule full.
Awesome. Well, good luck to you in that tournament, then.
Thank you.
So, any final words before we head out?
Nope, just it was fun, and good luck to the rest of the runners.
Well said. Can't put it much better myself. So again, GG on that race, PikaPals. Congrats to, I just had a complete brain fart, to Vlack for advancing to round 2. And let's like to throw a couple quick shout outs. Shout outs to White Wolfos for once again being a fantastic co-com.
Why, thank you.
Always a pleasure. Shout outs to Feasel, as always, for keeping things running behind the scenes. If you don't notice anything going wrong, that's because he just does that good of a job.
Yeah, everybody needs to go out and thank Feasel, especially with all these races and tournaments going on lately. He's really been doing a great job keeping everything together.
That's all for me. You got anything else, White Wolfos?
No, just come back, I guess, on Saturday. See Elfezo and Stanner face off.
Yep, both of them are very strong runners, so that should also be an excellent race.
All right, see you guys later.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good one.